Hey, this is Galan from the Hitting on Threes podcast. I am here with a video tutorial of how to make a rather simplistic, fairly cheap battle board. This, you'll notice, is going to be very similar to the tutorial that I posted on my first battle board. The difference between this is that this battle board will not be braced like the other battle board was. Now, I did get the idea of doing a braced battle board from miniwargamers.com. They have an awesome tutorial that Wargamer Dave did that talks about putting together a 6x4 single piece board and bracing it. With a large piece of plywood like that, you are going to need to brace it because it'll be prone to warping, especially thinner half-inch plywood like this. With 2x4 sections, you are not really as prone to warping, especially if you live in a climate that's not all that humid. Texas can be humid, but generally speaking, it's not enough, at least in the house, to bother with it. With bracing, I bought pieces of wood that's like this, and so the reason I'm not bracing it, as you can see, this is a fairly thin, narrow piece of wood. So what happens is we play on I have a 6-foot folding table, and with the surface area that's in contact with the table being that thin, the smallest nudge or bump could cause one of these sections to go spilling off of the table, dumping the army of your opponent or possibly your army onto the floor, breaking them, especially if you don't use plastic glue. It especially sucks when it's your opponent's army, like I did to Sturm Grenadier, one of our 4 members, when he was over playing a game with me, and I felt absolutely horrible. So, now that I got bracing out of the way, 2 minutes into the video, let's go over the materials we're going to need for this. The first thing, obviously, is plywood. Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever hardware store you shop at will likely sell plywood in 8x4 strips. That's awesome, because what you can do with that is create one 6x4 table or have 2 4x4 tables, especially for lower point games, combat patrol tournaments, whatever you're using them for. You can easily put together 2 tables. Secondly, you're going to need, at least for this kind of table, insulation foam. This is pretty hard. It pushes in, but it's fairly sturdy. A sheet of this costs, this is 1 inch thick and it cost me like $12 or $13. Home Depot actually cut the 8x4 section of insulation foam and the 8x4 section of plywood for free. They actually kind of did it all at the same time using whatever machine they have. Home Depot's policy is to do 2 cuts for free, and then each additional cut is 25 cents. I have yet to have Home Depot charge me for any cuts that I've done, and I believe John ran into the same thing at Lowe's here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So that should be easily taken care of. The plywood that I got is, I think it was $16 or $17. They have some cheaper plywood, but the surface is rougher, and although it's just a plastic table, I want to scratch it up as little as possible. And this kind of plywood that I have is not going to scratch it up quite as bad as the cheaper plywood will. The cheaper plywood I have seen run as cheap as like $9, so you could significantly cut the cost of this. Anyway, on to more material. You're going to need a caulk gun and caulk. I use latex caulk made by DAP, as you can see here. It is Alex Plus acrylic latex plus silicone. There is silicone caulk, and it apparently takes slightly longer time to dry, but it cures harder than latex caulk. The fact of the matter is latex caulk is going to cure just fine for what we're using it for. You could use liquid nails, but for what we're going to do for the surface treatment of this board that I'm making here, liquid nails and the spray paint that I use interact in a way that actually eats the foam from the bottom up. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure the chemical or the chemistry there, but it ends up weakening the foam significantly. So what we're going to do is take the plywood, apply the caulk around the outside of the plywood, and then across the middle in a diagonal strip, or multiple diagonal strips. Apply the foam to it, and then put something heavy on it to make sure it sits, and let it sit for about 8 hours before we do spray paint. One thing I will point out is some of the foam actually will have a thin plastic film on it. If it has that, you want to remove it. The reason being is you don't want your caulk adhering to the film, you want it adhering to the foam. If it adheres to the film, it's not going to create a good adhesion, and the foam will eventually come up from the plywood, which we don't want. This one you can see here, I have scratched into it and did not reveal any film. I did it on both sides. I'm gonna have to check before I go adhering it, but it would appear that this 1-inch foam doesn't have it. The 3/4 inch film or foam that I used before, 2F words kind of throws me off. The 3/4 inch foam that I used before did have the film on it, and so that actually, I learned the hard way that you don't want to adhere caulk to film because it doesn't create a good bond. So I am going to put the caulk down. That's CAULK for you hitting on threes fans that are used to our normal humor on our podcast. I'm going to adhere the foam to the plywood and be back. So, see you soon. Alright, I'm back here momentarily. You can see that I've already done one of the boards and actually put the wrong side of the foam down. I should have put that side down as the side that adhered instead of the other side. And so you can see here with the caulk, I have put a film around the outside and then some diagonally across, and that should be sufficient to hold it. You could go a little more liberal with it, especially if you have 4 tubes, but as I own about 3, I wanted to be somewhat conservative. So hopefully this adheres just fine. It should be, something like this works very similar in the past. I may actually put a little more right there. So I will be back. Hey there, hoes, I'm back. As you can see, I have all 4 foam pieces adhered to the plywood. I ended up using just over 1 tube of caulk. So if you're really conservative, then you could probably get by with 1 tube. Seeing that as I used it on 4, I either gotten really good at applying it or my foam will end up coming up. But regardless, you can see that I have 2 of them adhered with, or not adhered, weighted down with just a little bit of weight. I ended up kind of clomping on them using my my fatness to my advantage. So there's actually some flip-flop indentions you can see. Basically just getting the foam down onto the caulk really well. And being a big guy kind of works to my advantage. But in the meantime, I have some Harry Potter books, which aren't heavy, but they're heavy enough for this. And yes, I'm a Harry Potter fan, so make fun of me all you want. I have a box full of CDs, which is actually fairly heavy, a little mini toolbox, and a food processor, which we never use. I don't have anything on these 2 yet, probably because I don't have enough stuff to weight it down. But I'm going to dig around my garage to see if I can find some more stuff or get some more books out. In the meantime, I have some Valspar gloss paint. Now, Valspar, like the colored paint, the black paint that we've used in the past, does not eat foam. At least not this kind of foam. The same cannot be said for the gloss. The gloss will actually eat away at the foam a little bit, and we're going to use this to make some texture in our otherwise smooth playing board. So what you're going to do is, of course, you want to shake it up. The Valspar stuff has a locking mechanism to where it turns it off. So you want to face it to where the nozzle's out, and then, of course, you don't want to get too close because you don't want it to eat away, but you're just going to spray a little bit, and it will eat away at the foam. Again, we don't want it to do too much. You want to make sure that your garage or workspace is well ventilated, because I don't want you getting high off spray paint, because yeah, that's just silly. Who does that nowadays? So it's not going to eat away a lot at it, but if you get down close, you might be able to see where it's starting to create some distortion or I guess some eating away of the foam, just a little bit, just enough to create some nice texture, and that way we can go back over it with some dry brushing stuff later just to accentuate it. You don't want to do too much because you don't want it to eat away at the foam. This is a big reason why we used the DAP caulk instead of, say, liquid nails, because liquid nails interacts with the Valspar clear in a way, if I didn't mention before, eats the foam from the bottom up. So we're going to let this eat away at the foam, and I will come back and show you what it looks like and spray it down with some black spray paint, because we're going to go with the dead world, bombed out, orbital bombardment crap kind of playing surface. So there you go. Hey there, hoes. I have returned. Between my inability to improvise while I'm talking, racing motorcycles, and an airplane taking off, I have had to do this now for 11 times. So let's hope this is the take that makes it. As you can see, I have sprayed a panel. You saw my hand there as I'm talking with my hands. But I sprayed a panel down with some black and gray Valspar spray paint. Once that it's had a good chance to dry, I am going to go over it with some cheap white acrylic paint for some dry brushing effect, just on the texture that we did with the clear Valspar, which actually does melt the foam. The gray and the black do not melt the foam, so I always suggest using that brand, which you can get at Lowe's. With the black spray paint, you can see that it bled over to this other one. That's perfectly fine, because ultimately we're going to spray it black, so that's not a big deal at all. To show you guys the paint that I used, you can see the 3 cans of Valspar and the cheap white acrylic paint that I either got at Michael's or Walmart. I think at Walmart it's like $1.50, so it's not a big deal. The Valspar Gray is actually a primer. I have used that on a couple of models. One is the Metal Demon prints, and the other is one of the old metal and plastic Bell Predators from the Blood Angels Army that are kind of getting hard to find. Both models primed up just fine. In my opinion, the GW white and the Privateer Press black primer that I've used are both better than the Valspar and the Krylon that you get at Walmart, the cheaper primers. Some people, however, do not share that opinion and think that the cheaper primers are just fine, and for, what is it, $3 to $5, I'd have to agree. That's perfectly fine. I just like the way the other primers come out smoother. So, but it is an option to use. So, as you can see, this paint job took maybe half the can, because I was pretty liberal with the paint. I wanted it to go on nice and thick. The sides here are not painted. Once the caulk has had a chance to dry, then I will paint the sides. I just don't want the foam to come off. So let's recap the cost of this, because I did start out by saying this was fairly simple, which I think it is, and fairly cheap. You have $17 for the plywood. These are all pre-tax amounts. $13 for the 1-inch insulation foam. Cheaper if you go thinner. I think they have down to like ½ an inch, which you could definitely do. Let's see. I would end up suggesting to use 5 things of spray paint if you do it like I did, which is 3 things of the Valspar black, 1 of the Valspar gray primer, and then 1 of the Valspar clear, because again, the clear Valspar will melt the foam a little bit, and that you want that to create texture, just for I don't know, variety. I think those are like $4 each, so that's $20 extra. So you have that's 30 for the foam and the plywood, and then 20 for the spray paint, so that's $50. You have I would suggest 2 things of caulk, 3 if it's your first time doing something like this, and those are $2.25 a piece, so that's $4.50. The caulk gun that I suggest is $5. You're looking at about $60 there. And then if you want to do the white acrylic, that's $1.50 or something like that. You don't even need a big one like I showed you. You can get the smaller one, and that's probably going to be enough paint to do a project like this. So you're looking, after tax, maybe $65 to $70, depending on if you need to buy paint brushes or whatever. So in my opinion, that's fairly cheap for what could be used as 2 different 4x4 tables, 1 6x4 table that you're going to get a ton of use out of. That's portable. That way you can take it over to your friend's house or to your local friendly gaming store if they don't have a table. Or if you are a local friendly gaming store and you're watching this, it's a fairly cheap way of getting easy tables made. If you're a store, you may not want to get them in 2x4s. You may want to get them cut into 4x4 sections. Just that way you have them kind of permanently there. But regardless, $70 for something that you get as much use out of, and it can be touched up with acrylic paint if you chip some of the black, or whatever whatever may happen to it, you can always touch it up or respray it. You can go a step further and get some sealant. I actually have some over here that I picked up at a local hardware store. It's just a cheap water-based sealant. It's a huge thing that just adds a layer of sealant and protection to the board. You can do what John did with his, and that was buy some spackle and basically put the spackle down, get some rubber gloves, spread the spackle out, and then you dry brush that, and it makes it for a really, really interesting looking board. Or you can do like I did and just leave it plain, which is very simplistic. But of course, as you start to do more stuff, it runs the price up. But if you have any questions or comments or anything, feel free to email me at galan@hittingonthrees.com. That's GALAN like November at hittingon3s.com. Join our forums at hittingonthrees.com/forums. Or, you know, comment on the YouTube channel, like this video if you like this idea of the board. You know, half the reason we do the podcast and a big reason that it's so enjoyable is interacting with you guys and being able to help you out. And, you know, building a board can be an overwhelming project if you don't know where to start. So hopefully this gives you an idea of where to start. Maybe you can find it cheaper. Maybe you can do coupons or whatever. Or maybe you're able to get stuff cheaper than I was able to find it if you look better. But I hope you enjoyed the video and me rambling on and showing you my messy garage. So take care.